Well, this morning we're going to take probably an abbreviated look at Numbers 16. Remember a while back I talked a little bit about how there are 7 revolts against God in the book of Numbers, and this is symbolic. It symbolizes Israel's sort of like complete rebellion against God, 7 being the number of completeness. And here we're taking a look now at a rebellion by 3 Levites. And I'll read a little bit about the rebellion. Just wanting to note, right, that remember last Sunday, we took a look at Numbers 15, and I tried to make the case that the idea there, right, is that one of the purposes of Torah is to instill piety in the people of Israel, right? Piety here meaning both a reverence for God, a love for God, a devotion for God. The idea being, right, that piety is the thing that actually prevents from happening everything we've just seen happen, okay? All the rebellions and grumblings and all that kind of stuff. So piety here is really important, and obviously it's lacking here in the people of Israel. Anyway, let's take a look at number 16. This is the story of the rebellion of Korah. I'll read part of it to you and then say a couple things about the story. So here it goes, number 16:1. Now Korah, the son of Izhar, the son of Kohath, son of Levi, and Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the son of Peleth, sons of Reuben, took men, and they rose up before Moses with a number of the people of Israel. So they're rising up against Moses in rebellion. 250 chiefs of the congregation, chosen from the assembly, well-known men. And they assembled themselves together against Moses and against Aaron, and said to them, so here's their charge, their complaint. We'll see how actually what they say is totally unfounded and actually quite confused. But as you know from personal experience, right, just because what someone says is totally unfounded and they're totally confused, that very often doesn't stop them from saying it. Okay, so here it is. You have gone too far, for all in the congregation are holy, even one of them, every one of them, and the Lord is among them, that is the congregation. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord? When Moses heard it, he fell on his face, sort of a gesture of piety, reverence, and he said to Korah and all his company, in the morning, the Lord will show who is his and who is holy, and will bring him near. The one whom he chooses, he will bring near to him. Do this, take censers, Korah and all his company, and put fire in them, and put incense in them before the Lord tomorrow. And the man whom the Lord chooses shall be the Holy One. You have gone too far, sons of Levi. So they're accusing Moses of going too far. Moses turns right around. No. You're the ones who have gone too far. Is it too small a thing for you that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel to bring you near to himself to do service in the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to minister to them, and that he has brought you near him, and all your brothers, the sons of Levi, with you? And would you seek the priesthood also? Therefore, it is against the Lord you and all your company have gathered together. What is Aaron that you grumble against him? Okay, so that's sort of a rebuttal. And Moses sent to call Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and they said, so here's now what they say to Moses. We will not come up. Is it a small thing that you have brought us up out of the land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness? That you must also make yourself a prince over us? Moreover, you have not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, nor given us the inheritance of the fields and the vineyards. Will you put the eyes out of these men? We will not come up. And Moses was very angry and said to the Lord, "Do not respect their offering. I have not taken one donkey from them, and I have not harmed one of them." So there's the situation. So let's take a look at it and see if we can get a sense of what's going on here. So Korah says a number of things here that are just simply untrue. And they kind of reflect the state of his own soul, right? So we're getting an insight into, once again, what causes rebellion. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the causes. First of all, the first thing he says is just patently untrue. Korah says, this is something of a sort of populist argument, right? Korah says, look, all of us are part of God's covenant people, and any one of us could be a priest or a Levite, right? It's just a matter of filling out the job application and, getting hired. I don't understand why it is that, I have to be a Levite. I want to be a priest, like Aaron, wear fancy clothes and have people look up to me, stuff like that. What Korah here has overlooked is, right, that while it's true that all the people of Israel are indeed called to be holy, right, not everyone is called to do the same thing. Moses has been called to occupy a certain vocation. Aaron and his sons have been set aside for the priesthood. Korah and the members have been set aside to serve as Levites, but apparently that's not good enough for him, right? So Korah here is rebelling against sort of God's order of things. And we just want to kind of say something here that's really important, right? Among sinful people, which includes all of us, right? Among sinful people, order is a good thing, okay? Because by ourselves, right, we can sort of like degenerate into backbiting, competition, social ladder climbing, all sorts of nasty things, right? So here, right, both in Israel and then later on in the church, right, order is a really good thing. It kind of keeps kind of sinners in some sort of order, working with God and not against him. So at one level, right, Korah is rebelling against an order that God himself has established. So that's part of his blindness. The second thing that he charges is also like patently untrue. For the charge is, look, Moses, you've exalted yourself above the people of Israel. You've kind of like put on airs, and you just think you are the greatest thing in the world, and you just think, just because you're the head of these people that you are just number one and da-da-da-da. Of course, we know that's not true, right? And we'll see how it's not true again, because remember what's happened every time the people of Israel have rebelled against God? Remember what Moses has done? He's prayed for them. Okay? Even when they rejected his own leadership, Moses has interceded on behalf of these ungrateful, unruly people. And remember, I said a while back, right, that one of the things we're getting here in Moses is a type or prefiguration of the intercessory ministry of Christ, okay, who prays for sinners, who prays for people who reject him. So that's certainly going on here too. One other thing is also going on here that we just want to notice as well, and that's this. Korah has a kind of false understanding of what it means to occupy some position of leadership in God's people. Okay? Now, to be fair to him, right, it would have been easy to come by that wrong understanding, but that still doesn't justify, right? So in this world, right, and we'll see the same problem comes along when Israel gets a king, right? In this world, in the world of ancient Near Eastern culture, right, in most societies, right, priests actually have a huge amount of influence. In societies like Egypt or Babylon, right, they're simultaneously high government officials. They own lots of land. They're very wealthy. And Korah is in effect saying, well, I want to be like that, right? I'm unsatisfied being like an underling. I want to be elevated in the priesthood, and I want to have all that influence and all that power and all that wealth, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The problem here, right, is Korah doesn't know, or at least hasn't accepted the idea, right, that in this people, the people of Israel, like the church, being given authority is not a matter of having people look up to you, is not a matter of being able to boss people around. In the covenant people of God, having authority is a matter of responsibility. Okay? And I think we can see this in a number of ways, right? Think of that one scene, right, in the 10th chapter of the Gospel of Mark, remember? Where the apostles, James and John, come and they say, we've got one little favor we'd like to ask of you, Jesus, and that is, when you hit the big time, when you become king, and when you're bossing everybody around, will you promise that we will have important places in your government, and we'll get to boss people around with you? And basically, Jesus turns to them and he says, flat out, he basically says, you guys don't know what the hell you're talking about. That's not what I've come to do, okay? Because here's how things work in my kingdom, right? The greatest person in my kingdom is the person who serves the most, starting with me. Okay? And then moving out to you guys. Okay? This is why I think it's always interesting, right? And you can, if you want to do this, you can take a careful look at it. It's interesting if you look at in the liturgy for the ordination of a priest, same thing's true of a deacon, but if you look at the ordination, the liturgy for the ordination of a priest, there's that section there, right, that where the bishop examines the candidate and asks them questions, right? It's really interesting to notice, right, that all those questions actually point in one direction. Are you Joe Smith? Have you thought long and hard about what is going to happen to you after I lay my hands on your head? Are you sufficiently aware of the responsibility now that is going to rest on your shoulders for the people that you'll be serving? Are you aware, right, that your job is to preach the Word of God to them, to administer the sacraments of the new covenant to them, to be an example, a spiritual guide, a source of spiritual counsel, and a leader for your people? And by the way, if anyone is harmed as a result of what you do or of what you neglect to do, you'll have to answer to a higher authority than me. Think about that for a minute, okay? And if you still want to go forward, I'll lay my hands on your head. So authority means responsibility, and that's what Korah has not clearly internalized or become aware of. And notice the second complaint here that comes from the second group of people. Notice what they do. They accuse Moses of bringing them out into the wilderness for the sole purpose of killing them all. And then, just when you think it can't get more ridiculous, right? He comes out with this line, "You've taken us out of the land of milk and honey, Egypt, and you haven't led us into the promised land." Right? To which Moses, I think, if I had been Moses, I would have said something like this. Look, if you think that the land of Egypt was a land of milk and honey, you need to see a psychiatrist. Oh, and by the way, the reason why we're not yet in the promised land, if you haven't noticed, is because every time we make progress, you folks complain and rebel. But Moses doesn't say that because he's a better person than I am. Once again, right, remember I pointed out a while back, remember that Moses is described by this really important word, meek. We're told that Moses is the meekest person in the world. And I tried to make the point right there that meek here doesn't mean weak. Moses is not a weak figure, but he is meek, right? Because he's meek in this sense, right? Moses is a person who has subjugated his own self and his own importance to the larger purposes of God. That is, as Moses goes about this work, right, Moses is very much aware of that really important expression, right? It's not about you, right? Moses isn't like taking all this personally because he recognizes it's not about me. What this is all about is God accomplishing his purpose for his people, and so that's the way I'm going to approach that. Now what happens, to kind of shorten the story a little bit because our time is running out, God eventually intervenes to uphold the authority of both Moses and Aaron in their offices. And what happens is, in a dramatic moment, the ground opens up and Korah and his family are basically swallowed up. And then fire comes down and consumes the 250 elders who rebelled against Moses. Now, some people think this is extreme. I think that, once again, the point we have to get here is this, right? In rejecting Aaron, in rejecting Moses, the people of Israel haven't just simply, upended the organizational chart, as it were, right? They've rebelled against God and God's order. And that's a very serious thing. The whole success of the people of Israel actually depends on God and God's order triumphing. One final thing that we just want to take a quick look at is the very end of chapter 16. This is a really important kind of event. This is essentially Numbers 16:41 to 50. This is sort of like the end of the story. But on the next day, all the congregation of the people of Israel grumbled against Moses. So even after Korah and his family are swallowed up, and even after the fire comes down and consumes the 250 elders, the very next day, the people of Israel assemble and they're grumbling against Moses and against Aaron, saying, "You have killed the people of the Lord." No, we didn't kill the people of the Lord. The Lord killed the people of the Lord, and they darn well deserved it. That's not what he says, but that's what he could have said. And when the congregation had assembled against Moses and against Aaron, they turned toward the tent of meeting, and behold, the cloud of the divine glory covered it. And the glory of the Lord appeared, and Moses and Aaron went into the front of the tent of meeting. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Get away from the midst of this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment." And they fell on their face. Now, notice what's about to happen here in 16:46. And Moses said to Aaron, "Take your censer and put fire on it from the altar and lay incense on it and carry it quickly to the congregation and make atonement for them. For the wrath has gone out from the Lord, the plague has begun." So Aaron took it as Moses said, and ran in the midst of the assembly. And behold, the plague had already begun among the people. And he put on the incense and made atonement for the people. And he stood between the dead and the living, and the plague was stopped. And those who died in the plague were 14,700. Besides those who died in the affair of Korah. And Aaron returned to Moses at the entrance of the tent of meeting when the plague was stopped. So I think the way this story ends is like really important. That it's important to see what Moses does and also what he doesn't do. When he's told, right, that this judgment is going to come upon the people, and God says, "Look, you and Aaron stand back, and I'm going to get rid of all of them." Right? I'm just going to do away with a whole bunch of them. Okay? Moses and Aaron don't say, "Yeah, okay, hit them all." Moses says, "Aaron, take your censer, your thurible, and put some charcoal in it, put incense on it, and I want you to go out among the people with your incense to make atonement for their sin." Then we have this dramatic picture, right? I think this is a really, really important picture. This picture here, right, of literally Aaron, the high priest of Israel, the person who's supposed to represent God to the people, right? He's literally standing in between those who have been killed by the plague and those who are still alive. Once again, This is kind of like a prefiguration of the work of Christ, right? Who literally inserts himself, right, into the middle of the judgment of God so that some can be preserved. One final thing here before I start, I just want to make I think it's always important to make parallels. So this bit with the incense is, I think, significant, and I wish we had more time to talk about it, but I just want to point one passage here that I think is significant. In this 8th chapter of Revelation, we find this thurible and incense reappearing. So I just want to note it, just so we can kind of have a greater sense of its significance. Here, this is Revelation 8, 1 through 5. When the Lamb opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. Then I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. And another angel came and stood at the altar with a golden censer, and he was given much incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints in the golden altar before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints rose before God from the hand of the angel. Then the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar and threw it on the earth, and there were peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. That is one of the things we're getting here that I think is really important. We've seen this already in Exodus. We're seeing it again in the Revelation of John, but it's this kind of dual significance of incense, right? On one hand, the cloud of incense is intended to sort of call one's attention to the mysterious but invisible presence of God, which is no less real for being invisible. But also it symbolizes the prayers of God's people. So here we have this dramatic picture, right, of Aaron standing in the middle of Israel under judgment, right, with his censer and the plague having struck this part, the plague having passed over this part over here, and Aaron is like standing in the midst of them. So I think one of the lessons that we're getting here, and this is to kind of complete this idea, right, that the whole story of the journey to the promised land is like teaching us the virtues that we need to follow God. One of the things that we're learning here is something that I think is really important, but it gets underrated, and that's this. There's a very real sense in which the health and well-being of the people of God, right, depends upon godly leaders exercising godly leadership, and that leadership being received and respected. When we don't have that, right, we can have all kinds of things that go wrong, right? On one hand, we can get leaders who aren't godly, right, who are egotistical and develop an agenda. I remember in a United Methodist magazine many years ago, there was a cartoon. It shows a pastor, and he's standing, he's got like a royal robe and a crown on, and he's talking to someone, and the caption has the pastor saying, "What's this about me being out of touch with the people?" We don't want that. On the other hand, right, we also have another problem, right? We also have a problem of people, right, who because of individual thoughts or individual desires, right, don't receive godly leadership and won't follow it. And both those things create problems for God's people in sometimes very significant ways. Well, unfortunately, the rebellions aren't over. And next week we'll look at yet another one.